Alrighty, fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. The early bird does get the worm, and you beat all the queues whilst getting in. I think we still have quite a few hundred people that are lining up, so you are here. Congratulations to you all. It is a pleasure to be here. It's been quite a few years now. Can anyone guess how many years the Crypto Valley Conference has been going on for? 11. Oh, that'd be great. 7, yes. 15, wow, that would be wonderful. Yes, it's been seven years now in the making. It makes us all feel a little bit old, but I'm really happy to say that we have lasted this long. Sometimes, you know, a length of time can be a predictor for many things. Most startups don't survive 7 years, so I'm quite happy that the Crypto Valley Conference and the Crypto Valley has endured a lot of ups and downs. There have been a lot of places around the world, like Switzerland, that have been upholding a lot of, let's say, what blockchain technology has been providing, some of the apps and the likes. There are other places around the world where it's been a bit more difficult, but we're starting to see some light, and actually a beaming of light, maybe due to some spray tan or other things that have been coming out. But the US has been a topic on a lot of minds, so it's one of the reasons why today we wanted to start with this topic. But before I just wanted to give a special thank you to MME, who has been a supporter of the Crypto Valley Conference, and of course the Crypto Valley for many, many years, and is going to be hosting the next couple of sessions. And yeah, Andreas and Ronald are going to be starting with a little bit of this US topic, and I think a topic that's on all of your minds, what is really happening within the US. So yeah, Andreas, Ronald, I'll let you come up. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for getting up so early for us. I do believe it's going to be worth it. We have a hot topic today.
Special color.
Please on. What is really happening in the US? And maybe to start with, I recall, we've just briefly talked about that before the panel, but back in 2000, I think it was 17, Consensus New York, one of the biggest conferences at that time in the crypto space. I was sitting on a panel, was a discussion, well, are token securities, is easy security, yes or no? It was a big debate, was entirely unclear to most people involved. And you know, the same discussion happened still in 2024, and not much happened in between in terms of legal certainty. And now we have a new administration in place. The US has a new administration in place. A lot of hope in the crypto industry is placed towards changes happening in many factors, changes in regulatory certainty, new regulations being put in place, new enforcement practices being put in place. And I think that's the focus of today's panel and discussion. We really want to see what is happening in the US in terms of what needs to be happening from an industry perspective, and what is actually happening, what has happened since February this year. And that not only in terms of the most obvious topics like stablecoins, that's like one of the big topics currently, but also from an industry perspective for projects issuing token, deploying DeFi technology. So we want to look at the whole picture of the industry and see where is the US moving and what does that mean to the industry.
So from my side, I'm happy to introduce you to the participants in this panel. So we have real capacities here. So on the one hand, we have Lily from Solana. I mean, it's one of the biggest layer ones, and she's the president there of the management, and very active currently all over the world. In particular, as you see also, they do things in the US. And then we also have Cohn from Steptoe, who is a partner there and practice group leader, fintech cryptocurrency, and he's in the space since 2015. And he's coming from DC, so he flew in for this event, and he's basically at the heart where things are happening now. And so let's directly jump into the topic. So Lily, first coming to you. I mean, we have seen that Solana started now more engaging in the US. You had this Accelerate conference in May, a developers conference. And before, basically, we haven't seen a lot of engagement publicly in the US. So what has changed from your perspective?
I think it's pretty simple. The last administration was ideologically, outwardly, programmatically, intentionally hostile to crypto. It's just that simple. And it comes from an ideological place that therefore cannot be negotiated with. And certain individuals, Elizabeth Warren specifically, because she is upstream of Gary Gensler. So Gary Gensler, if you remember, in 2018, 2019, he was so eager as to even go be a advisor to Binance. Unfortunately, he did not secure that very lucrative advisorship and may have considered that to be a point of retaliation in subsequent years. And the reason for this is because Elizabeth Warren, as an individual, she just believes that that the government should regulate and control and protect consumers. And she thinks that this is the government's job. So this is not just about crypto, but anything which puts the power of into individuals, companies, et cetera, is something she doesn't like. This is not a rational position. This is a worldview that was then executed on intensely for 4 years, and it was an agenda item to kill crypto. And so that changed.
Okay, so...
Disagree, right?
Yeah.
No. I mean, the shame of it all is, right, I couldn't name the chair of FINMA or any a couple of regulatory agencies in the world. But I think Lily's right that the personalities came to dominate questions of law in the United States over the last 4 years. And Elizabeth Warren's perspectives on consumer protection go back before 2020 and they go back before crypto. But the blockchain and cryptocurrency industry got swept up into that. What we're seeing now is an administration coming in and saying, we don't want to do that. We want to take a different approach. And I think you're seeing more members of Congress also saying, I don't want to line up behind that. There are other ways to address this emerging technology. And even more fundamentally, this technology is here. And there's no amount of government regulation that's going to make it go away. So how do we more effectively put a set of regulatory guardrails around it so that we can know where the outliers are on the outside, and we can give the vast majority of companies that want to operate within a regulatory environment some boundaries and guardrails to work inside. And that's what we're seeing in development now. The withdrawal of some of the worst pieces of regulation. We're seeing a dramatic change in the posture of the enforcement agencies, whether that's the civil enforcement agencies or the Department of Justice. And we're seeing new legislation and guidance and ideally rulemakings coming forward that are going to take a very different stance towards the industry and towards the technology and really let it grow and develop, as opposed to trying to kind of eliminate it through regulation and enforcement.
Maybe, obviously, a lot has happened in the last 4 months. It is, I believe. The key 3 developments that have happened in the US that strengthened the position of the crypto industry for you, what was that?
So, from my perspective, I think the first indication, we saw what I would say a set of 3, which I would bundle together. The congressional invalidation of SAB 121, the withdrawal of SAB 121, the congressional invalidation of the IRS DeFi rules, and the DOJ memo on enforcement. Those 3 together basically kind of stopped and pulled back the regulatory posture of the Biden administration. Second was kind of a renewed effort on stablecoin legislation, which ideally will be a shorter term issue. We'll see that ideally pass both houses of Congress, get signed shortly. And then the third is a real effort to address the market structure issue, which is really that issue from 2017 about what's a security, what's not, if it's not a security, what is it? Ideally, that's on a shorter path too. That's probably going to take a little bit longer. But I think those three things, if I can bundle up those first three, because they came with the withdrawal of the cases against the exchanges, and clarification about what enforcement would go forward. But I think those three blocks, I would say, are the key things. I don't know, Lily, if you would agree or add or.
Yeah, I think that there's the two concrete pieces of legislation right now in Congress, stablecoins and then market structure. There's a lot of ins and outs of those. And then at the agency level, then one of the things that we're working very closely on is we submitted something called Project Open, which applies for exemptive relief from the SEC in order to enable equities on chain. So essentially the functions of a blockchain, which is to maintain a ledger, core function of the blockchain, could fulfill some of the functions you would typically assign to a clearing agent or a transfer agent. So that, I think, is that's on agency level, and I think there will also be some discussions with agencies on this ongoing sort of what does the SEC do, what does the CFTC do, also when it comes to perps trading. And we expect that Brian Quinten's is probably going to be confirmed very shortly, so I would expect the CFTC will also become proactive and more constructively engage with the industry. So those are some of the very near-term things that we see. Of course, the elephant in the room is the extreme activity from the executive branch on private projects in crypto, and that does create some overall animosity to crypto from the Democrats who still continue to have senior individuals like Elizabeth Warren that she just hates crypto. There's nothing else to say. And we all know that, So that has become a complicating dimension, and we'll see.
Lily, maybe, so you as a layer one, basically, as you mentioned, I mean, there are further developments, but the main argument that you're saying, you increase your engagement now because it's a mind shift. But if you're looking at, for example, the Genius Act, it's more on stablecoin. I mean, it's interesting for the projects on Solana, but it's not directly for the benefit of you as a layer one, rolling out as a layer one. And the second thing is the Clarity Act, which could affect you because it clearly separates between what is subject to SEC, what is not subject to SEC, which is more CFTC. But from your perspective, I mean, what would you expect or wish that you have clarity also in the long run? I mean, I understand there is a mind shift, but the shift could also go into another direction as long as there is nothing put into law.
Well, I think that clarity on, there's so many things, and then the next question is what practically can you get done in the next 18 months, really? Because the US works on 4-year cycles, but really also 2-year cycles, and there's slim majorities in the House and the Senate right now, which need to be protected and or extended in order, I think, for crypto to continue to have any sort of proactive legislation in Congress. Agencies, then I think you do have a 4-year cycle there. So I think that first of all, one of the reasons why we became active is because the voices in Washington, the crypto voices in Washington are a VC firm, an exchange, and then a holding company. And none of those are front and center really focused on the core of crypto, which is a decentralized protocol. And more specifically, I think the point of blockchain has always been infrastructure for financial markets. And so you really need a voice in Washington, which is still the most influential regulator. However dysfunctional it might be, it's still the most influential one in the most influential market that has the greatest depth and capital and talent by far, right? And so you have to kind of be present and add a perspective as to actual bona fide decentralization of financial infrastructure and why that's important, and also why that's important for America to have a role in that. With the internet, America was front and center in building this thing, right? And with so much of our modern digital communication infrastructure, why is it that my phone number is a +1? Because many of these things were led from America, even though they are ultimately open source and available to all. And I think there's a good reason also just purely for American interests why that is something that we should advocate for America having a leadership rather than a followership role in.
Now, I would like to spend some time on looking on, industry participants building up out of America in the future. So let's say in Switzerland, we all know we have a lot of the Layer 1 foundations, we have a lot of projects building dApps on top of them, issuing token, which they do on a quite global level, of course, complying with the regulations on the local level now under MiCA. The US has always been a challenging market to target from Switzerland. Where do you see this change in actually mindset and regulations in the US has now passed away also for non-US companies entering the US market as a target market?
Well, look, I think from a regulatory perspective, the U.S. has always considered that anyone who tries to service the U.S. market or service U.S. persons is subject to U.S. regulatory and enforcement jurisdiction. So from, I think, a U.S. perspective, there was a view less about a company is from this country or from that country, and more, are they trying to service U.S. customers or are they not? What I think the shift here is setting a set of a regulatory environment in which you can service U.S. customers and service the U.S. market with certainty around what your regulatory obligations are. And so I think it's meant to be, number one, an invitation to service the U.S. market. But you definitely hear from the administration there's also an emphasis of come to the U.S., come and create presence, be here, do things. And so I think that is something that we'll be looking to see how it plays out. Number one, for companies, for example, here that want to service the U.S. market, you'll be able to understand what the regulatory environment is. You'll make choices about whether you want to also have presence in the United States, do things in the United States yourself with partners and others. And then second is the question of, I think the opportunities to build on that, the opportunities for companies here to do things with companies in the United States for the first time without having to worry about, a very uncertain regulatory environment is there. There's still questions about harmonization that are there, but I think that the posture is shifting to come service the U.S. market. Here are our rule set, be part of this market.
So what I would be interested in, we also have seen that the SEC stopped a lot of actions that have been initiated. So for example, also against Uniswap and many others. And does that mean now basically it's already time to start in the US or engage in the US with a DEX project or a layer 2 or a dApp? Or is it still basically, we are in a good way, but let's see the next 18 months. As Lily mentioned, this is a critical time period. So what's your stance there?
I think the U.S. has the deepest talent market, and especially in tech, and in terms of quantity and also just quality. If you look at the depth of technical talent in the U.S. with everything that's been created out of Silicon Valley and proliferated throughout the country. Even in the depths of the last administration, New York had already become the head of the epicenter of the DeFi ecosystem in terms of developers and projects having a presence of some sort there. And now that there's a lot of Wall Street institutions coming into crypto as well, digital assets is what they call it, and what you also see now is there are some trading firms that used to be explicitly offshore, now setting up shop in New York. So once again, I think New York is going to be the capital formation capital of the world, or at least one of them, also when it comes to crypto. And so I think I think that the SEC cases were done deliberately without merit in most cases. And yes, they did also prosecute a number of scams, but then some of the lighthouse projects in this space they went after just to, because they wanted to kill crypto. And in spite of that, you still had this New York, in spite of that, and the New York DFS, and all these things still became the epicenter of DeFi. And so now that that's been relaxed again, I think a pretty good place to be.
Yeah, and I think that one of the reasons why you saw the exchanges become the target was, I think if you watch the evolution of Gary Gensler's time service at the SEC, he started trying to blanket the landscape with enforcement actions, and that just bogged down the agency. So he saw the exchanges as the places where you could have the most impact with the fewest number of high impact efforts. What the new administration, what you can take from the withdrawal of the exchange cases, what you can take from the administration's perspective is the SEC wasn't alleging that Coinbase or Kraken or others were doing anything fraudulent. They weren't doing anything criminal. They had violated registration requirements in terms of, these are securities, you are trading them. The new administration has said we're not prosecuting those cases, and so the risk of that is a lot lower. However, I think the way to think about it is the time is coming. We're getting much more clarity, but we're not there. We're not 100% there. And there, I think, is one key thing that needs to be synchronized up, which is the New York BitLicense regime has an exemption for software providers, and it creates a space for for companies to operate safely under their rule set. And it creates, I think, and Lily, correct me, something of a mindset to think about DeFi, to create a mental model for DeFi about how it fits in the larger scheme of the ecosystem. I'm not sure that there's that yet at the federal level, and I think you see that in exemptions for in a sense, non-centralized stablecoins in the Genius Act. You see that with still wrestling with questions around DeFi from FinCEN, the federal anti-money laundering regulator, and others. So I think that that's one kind of flag I would raise, is that I think we're not quite there at the federal level about a mental model that the agencies and the Congress can kind of get their minds around, particularly with respect to DeFi and the value conceptually and comprehensively of decentralized activities.
When I listen to both of you, I kind of, my key takeaway is, and I hope that's accurate, the US now is in a development stage to create higher legal certainty around token issuance, secondary market activities, whatever that may be, but we're not there yet. If you now look at markets that have already been working on that process for many, many years and have quite a high degree of legal certainty, taking Singapore, taking Switzerland, now taking the EU with MiCA, which, there's still, even if you create those legislations and create a lot of legal certainty around topics, always new topics arise which come into a gray zone. And one of them which many jurisdictions struggle is DeFi. So the key question is always, when is something sufficiently decentralized so it does not fall under the regulations but is perceived as a mere technology? And that's an ongoing discussion. Now, looking at the US lacking legal certainty on the ground level, is that also already part of the discussion?
So I think it is, and I think you see it, for example, in the Clarity Act, in the market structure legislation, where there is some definition given around the path to decentralization to its mature blockchain system. But I think there's the devil's in the details on that, and there's likely to be a lot more consideration and debate about exactly what that means in the pathway there. And the legislation is really just the starting point. But again, the other part that's always a challenge in the United States is we don't have a single integrated financial regulator. And so we have to get a half dozen financial regulators of one variation or another on the same page about a particular approach before we can have integrated, harmonized regulatory posture, even just within the United States, let alone with other countries.
Lily, we have seen that the SEC also has issued a guidance or a statement regarding staking. So they made it clear that whether it's direct staking or delegated staking, it's not a financial contract. So which of course is very beneficial for also Solana and which makes a lot of sense. Is that something that you think will also be manifested in any kind of act? So for example, in the Clarity Act, where it clearly says that this is not the SEC, this is something else, or I think that would be something very important because it's like a fundamental decision.
Yeah, that's great. What I think would be good to have in the US as well is first you're going to get the ETFs. There's going to be more ETFs. And what would be great to see after that is staking ETFs. That's what people have here in Europe. And of course, passing through some of that staking yield is very desired by buyers and holders. So hopefully that's something that will be permitted as well in future staking ETFs.
Okay. And maybe I see our time is almost up. Goes fast, but one last thought. We talked a lot about regulatory developments or developments related to application of regulations in the financial markets sector. But another big topic for a lot of companies is tax. So is there the same kind of development versus clarity on tax treatments for the crypto industry? Is that also part of the agenda of the new administration?
I mean, I think it has to be. There has to be synchronization between the tax regime, which currently sees cryptocurrency as property, and the way that we think about the use of cryptocurrency and digital assets, if you, depending on your preferred term. What was interesting was that the IRS, I think, did make something of an effort to understand the industry and to make distinctions between different types of infrastructure and activities in the rulemaking that they did that was negated by Congress. It was, I think, at the end of the day, it wasn't what industry wanted and necessarily functional, but it represented, I think, a good faith effort to try to do it. And so I do think that that's going to be a necessary piece. And I do hope that, and I would anticipate under this administration that the IRS will make an effort to synchronize their approach to taxation of cryptocurrency consistent with the other actions that we're seeing.
Wonderful. I think, unfortunately, we already have to round up the conversation. Maybe one last question to both of you. If you look ahead 4 years' time, so not only 18 months, but really 4 years after the first term of the new administration, or this term, where do you see the US will stand in terms of crypto?
That's going to depend on the election 4 years from now, the election 2 years from now, or 18 months from now, and then the one 4 years from now, and whether there are very strong voices. The last one that were just con crypto, and this is pro. Even if it's just neutral, then that might actually be okay. They do certain things that are sufficiently thoughtful, sufficiently a little bit supportive, rather than heavily sort of trying to prosecute the industry. That would be okay. And many of the other things in this administration's agenda are more important to that, right? There is a problem in the US with regards to the integrity of voting rolls and those things, and then the integrity of the census. And those are bigger priorities for the United States, frankly, than crypto policy. As much as I'm involved in this specific space, but the larger issues are actually upstream of how these decisions are going to get made.
Yeah, and I think that just fundamentally taking advantage of the opportunity that the current environment provides to build and to work with the members, I think in both parties, honestly, who want to be supportive of the industry for whatever reason that is, and building on that to get through these pieces of legislation, build sensible regulations, show the value of projects, that will be a virtuous circle, I think.
Okay, okay. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Do we still have time for questions? Yes, 1, 2 questions, if there are any from the audience. No questions. Good.
Too early.
Well, we're going to stick around throughout the day, so if anything arises you want to discuss, Alan is here, Lily is going to be here, and Ronnie and myself as well. So thanks a lot for being here.
All right, fantastic.